They called him the strongest man who ever lived, a man who tore apart a roaring lion with his bare hands and defeated an entire army using nothing more than the jawbone of a donkey. But what if everything you've heard about Samson is incomplete? Was his incredible strength really hidden in his hair, or was the truth far deeper? The strongest man in history wasn't defeated by a giant or an army. He was defeated by the weaknesses within his own heart. Samson lived during one of the darkest periods in Israel's history. There was no king. Everyone did what seemed right in their own eyes. Because the people repeatedly turned away from God, the mighty Philistine empire ruled over them with fear. In a small village lived Manoah and his wife. They longed for a child, but year after year, their prayers seemed unanswered. Then, everything changed. The angel of the Lord appeared with astonishing news. Their son would not be ordinary before he was even born. God had already chosen him. The angel declared that the child would be a Nazirite from birth. His hair would never be cut. He would drink no wine and remain devoted to God all his life. Samson wasn't simply born with strength. He was born with a divine purpose. As Samson grew, the Spirit of the Lord began to work powerfully through him. Yet while God was preparing him to confront Israel's enemies, Samson's heart was drawn toward the very people who oppressed his nation. One day, while traveling to the Philistine town of Timnah, he saw a young Philistine woman, captivated by her beauty. He returned home with only one demand: "Get her for me. She is the one I want." His parents pleaded with him. "Is there no woman among your own people? Must you marry one of the Philistines?" But Samson refused to listen. As Samson journeyed toward Timnah, something terrifying happened. Without warning, a young lion burst from the vineyard with a thunderous roar. There were no weapons, no soldiers, no escape. But in that very moment, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson with extraordinary power. With his bare hands, he seized the lions and tore it apart. Sometime later, Samson returned along the same road. Inside the lion's lifeless body, he discovered something astonishing. A swarm of bees had built a hive inside the carcass. Golden honey filled its hollow remains. Samson scooped out the honey with his hands, eating it as he walked. He even shared it with his parents, without telling them where it came from. At the wedding celebration, 30 Philistine men were chosen to accompany Samson. Confident in his cleverness, Samson proposed a riddle. Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. He promised expensive garments if they solved it, but if they failed, they would owe him the same. The Philistine men couldn't solve the riddle, so they threatened Samson's bride. "Convince your husband to reveal the answer, or your family will die." Day after day, she cried before Samson. She pleaded. She begged. She refused to stop until at last, Samson gave in. She immediately revealed the answer to the Philistine leaders. The betrayal had begun. When the Philistines answered the riddle, Samson immediately knew he had been betrayed. Filled with burning anger, he traveled to Ashkelon. There, empowered by the Spirit of the Lord, he struck down 30 Philistine warriors, took their garments, and paid his wager. Victory had become vengeance, and vengeance would soon consume his life. Samson returned to visit his wife, only to discover that she had been given to another man. Heartbroken and furious, he declared, "This time, I have every right to get even with the Philistines." His anger was no longer personal. It was becoming a war. What happened next would leave the Philistines in shock. Samson captured 300 foxes. He tied them together in pairs by their tails and fastened burning torches between them. As darkness covered the land, he released them into the Philistine grain fields. Within moments, golden harvests, olive groves, vineyards, everything was consumed by fire. The Philistines watched helplessly as their wealth disappeared in flames. The Philistines demanded revenge. Terrified of another attack, 3,000 men of Judah went to Samson, not to fight beside him, but to hand him over. Samson agreed to be tied with new ropes on one condition. Promise, you will not kill me yourselves. Bound by his own people, Samson was delivered to the enemy. As the Philistines rushed toward him, shouting in triumph, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson once again. The rope snapped like burned thread. Looking around, Samson found the jawbone of a donkey lying on the ground. With that unlikely weapon, he struck down 1,000 Philistine warriors. The battlefield fell silent. Only Samson remained standing. After the battle, Samson collapsed from exhaustion. His victory had drained every ounce of strength. For the first time in years, the mighty warrior cried out to God, "Lord, you gave me this great victory. Please don't let me die of thirst." God answered immediately. Water burst from a rock, and Samson drank. His strength returned. The God who gave victory also gave mercy. Years passed. Then Samson met a woman named Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines saw an opportunity unlike any before. Secretly, they approached Delilah with an offer. "Find out the source of his great strength, and each of us will reward you with silver beyond your imagination." A dangerous game had begun. Samson thought he was in control, but every conversation brought him one step closer to disaster. Again and again, Delilah asked, "Samson, tell me the secret of your strength." 3 times Samson deceived her. 3 times the Philistines rushed in. 3 times he escaped with ease. Instead of recognizing the danger, Samson treated betrayal like a game. He never realized that every compromise was bringing him closer to the moment that would change his life forever. Day after day, Delilah continued asking the same question. Her words became a constant weight on Samson's mind. Finally, exhausted by her persistence, he gave in. He looked into her eyes and whispered, "A razor has never touched my head. I have been dedicated to God as a Nazirite since before I was born. If my head is shaved, my strength will leave me, and I will become as weak as any other man." For the first time in his life, Samson revealed the secret he had guarded for years. Delilah immediately sent word to the Philistine rulers, "Come back one more time. He has finally told me everything." That night, Samson rested with his head in Delilah's lap. While he slept peacefully, a man entered quietly. One lock at a time, Samson's hair was cut. The symbol of his lifelong dedication to God was gone. Suddenly, Delilah cried, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." Samson jumped to his feet. He expected another miraculous escape. He expected another victory, but the Bible records one of its saddest moments. He did not know that the Lord had departed from him. His strength was gone. Within seconds, the strongest man in Israel became the weakest man in the room. The Philistines captured Samson. They gouged out his eyes, bound him with bronze chains, and forced Israel's greatest judge to grind grain like a slave inside a prison. The mighty warrior who once terrified nations now stumbled through darkness alone. Sin had taken him farther than he ever imagined. Samson's failures are well known, but so are his remarkable strengths. He possessed extraordinary courage. He never retreated from impossible battles. Again and again, the Spirit of the Lord empowered him to protect Israel. For 20 years, he served as a judge. Despite his imperfections, the New Testament remembers Samson as one of the great heroes of faith. His story reminds us that God often works through imperfect people to accomplish extraordinary purposes. But Samson also carried weaknesses that eventually destroyed him. He often allowed desire to overrule wisdom. He ignored godly counsel. His anger led to revenge. His pride convinced him he could never fall. Worst of all, he slowly treated God's calling as something ordinary. His downfall did not begin with Delilah. It began years earlier, with one compromise after another. No one falls in a single moment. Collapse is usually the result of small decisions repeated over time. Hidden inside one short verse is one of the greatest messages of hope in the entire story. While Samson labored in prison, the Bible quietly says, However, the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. This was more than hair growing back. His strength had never truly come from his hair. His hair was only the outward sign of a covenant with God. Its growth symbolized something even greater. God was not finished with Samson. Even after failure, there was still room for repentance, mercy, and restoration. Meanwhile, the Philistines celebrated. Thousands gathered inside the magnificent Temple of Dagon, believing their false god had defeated the God of Israel. They laughed. They celebrated. They mocked the blind judge. "Bring Samson," they shouted. "Let him entertain us." The once mighty warrior was led into the crowded temple in chains, but no one noticed. God was preparing one final act. Standing between the two great pillars that supported the temple, Samson whispered one final prayer. "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, strengthen me just one more time. No pride, no boasting, no anger, only complete dependence on God." It was the most humble prayer Samson had ever prayed, and heaven answered. With one final cry, Samson pushed against the pillars with all his strength. The stone groaned, the pillars cracked, the roof began to collapse. Within moments, the mighty Temple of Dagon crashed to the ground. The rulers of the Philistines fell. Their army was broken. The Bible tells us that Samson defeated more enemies in his death than he had during his life. Samson's story teaches lessons that many people overlook. His strength never came from his hair. It came from the Spirit of God. His hair represented a covenant, a visible reminder of a life set apart for God's purpose. Another lesson is just as powerful. Samson's greatest victory came after his greatest failure. When he finally stopped trusting in himself and trusted completely in God, he fulfilled his calling in a way he never had before. God's mercy reached him even in his darkest moment. The same God who judged Samson also restored him when he turned back in humility. Samson's story is not only ancient history, it speaks directly to our lives today. Many people are gifted, talented, successful, influential, but talent without character is dangerous. Private compromises eventually become public consequences. A single bad decision rarely destroys a life. More often, it is the result of many small compromises ignored over time. Yet Samson also reminds us of something even more important. No matter how far you've fallen, God's grace is greater. When we humble ourselves, seek His forgiveness, and return to Him, He is able to redeem what seemed lost. Samson will always be remembered as one of the strongest men in history, but his greatest legacy isn't his physical strength. It's the reminder that true strength is found in complete dependence on God. His life asks each of us one question: what hidden weakness could quietly destroy the purpose God has placed in your life if it remains unchecked? Think about that question today. If this deep dive helped you see Samson's story in a new way, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another Bible character deep dive. And tell us in the comments, which Bible character should we uncover next? Until next time, keep seeking the truth hidden within God's Word.